The great Hoin Kyoma is a crazed mad scientist with goals of taking over the world. He's brash, rude, and prone to sudden bouts of maniacal laughter and spewing on about something called Steins Gate. He also doesn't exist, and neither does Steins Gate. They are nothing more than fronts put forward by a young man named Rintaro Okabe. Watching through Steins Gate for the first time, Okabe is definitely not the easiest character to get a grasp on, and this is definitely because of his constant insistence on maintaining his mad scientist persona, the previously mentioned Hoin Kyoma. As such, moments of him being nice to even his closest friends are few and far between at the start, referring to them as simply as lab assistants. This attitude certainly doesn't endear him to too many people, especially Kurisu Makise, but some of his closer friends seem to be used to this behavior and stay with him nonetheless. This applies especially to his childhood friend Mayuri, who endearingly refers to herself as Hoin Kyoma's hostage. With all of this in mind, plus the crazy science experiments he always performs, which despite usually being mundane or bizarre failures, are still quite impressive, it's hard to remember that in the end, Okabe is only 18 years old. He's practically just a kid, and the story shows him as he gets in way over his head in a truly nightmarish situation. Picture this. You're an 18-year-old mad scientist wannabe, and your attempt at a microwave that connects to your phone ends up being a time machine that can send information back in time. With the way Okabe is, him wanting to test it out is a no-brainer, especially with how it would further his Kyoma persona. At the same time, though, he found himself increasingly more and more terrified by their discovery, especially since he seems to be the only one who can consistently remember everything from the previous timelines they altered. These moments of introspection give us a glimpse into his true personality outside of Kyoma. Everything comes to a head when their time travel exploits get them noticed by a company called CERN, with goals of ruling the world using time travel, and this ends up getting Mayuri killed. But hey, Okabe has time travel, so it'll be an easy fix, no matter how scarring it must be to see a childhood friend die. So he goes back and she dies again. He goes back and she dies again. Regardless of how it occurred, Mayuri's death had become a multiversal constant, and Okabe's invention was directly to blame. From this moment on in the story, we get to see a broken Okabe, one who has seen his closest friend's death an untold number of times, overcome the depths of despair to overcome destiny and save his friend. Perhaps the most striking moment within these depths is when Okabe declares that, of course there's no Steins Gate or Hoin Kyoma. They were just silly things he made up. That may sound like it doesn't mean much, but with how much he clung to this delusion in how he acted before, this rejection of them showed how much grief he was truly in. Nonetheless, in this grief is where Okabe shined the brightest. After all, not only was Mayuri's life on the line, but so was the entire world's future. The sacrifices that this man had to put not only himself, but his own friends through were absolutely heartbreaking to watch. He had to undo all the good that his time travel caused. He had to revert Ruka back to being male when he wanted to be a girl. He had to return Ferris's dad to being dead, leaving her without him once again for a decade. He had to undo Suzuha meeting her dad for the first and only time. And lastly, he had to let Kurisu die. Okabe suffered more than most could even imagine, but in the end, he was able to get his happy ending. Seeing him rise from despair to once again be able to joke about Hoin Kyoma was an absolute joy. Before I wrap this up, I'd also like to mention his relationship with Kurisu. While this may apply more to what makes Kurisu a good character, the fact that Okabe consistently found Kurisu at his side when she couldn't even remember from loop to loop was one of the most heartwarming parts of the show. Through all of his despair, at least he had one shoulder to consistently lean on.